My Hero Academia is the show where everyone got superpowers. Hello everyone and welcome to my show. It's the show where I talk about, discuss, and rate superpowers and their uses. As for today, we'll be talking about Midoriya from My Hero Academia and his power, one for all. So who is Midoriya? Midoriya is a student in UA Hero Academy. And what's one for all? One for all is a quirk that was passed down to him from the number one hero, All Might. And if you didn't get anything from what I just said, don't worry, I got you. My Hero Academia is a show where everyone is born with superpowers, and these powers are called quirks. And the way that it is given to someone is it's given to them by birth, although they manifest anywhere anytime between birth and 4 years old. So for the most part they do have to do with someone's genetics. However, some unlucky people are not born with quirks, such as Midoriya, the one we are going to be talking about today. However, I have already said that Midoriya have one for all. You see, one for all is a unique quirk that is actually passed down from an individual to another individual, and it does not have to do anything with blood or family relationships. And the one that gave it to Midoriya is All Might, the number one hero. And the fact that there are powers, that mean of course there are heroes and villains, which created a society where being a hero is a line of work, meaning there are specialized hero academies around the world, and just so happened that UA is the number one hero academy in Japan. Now that I'm done explaining the basics, it's time to give a spoilers alert. This video will include spoilers all the way up to chapter 325 in the manga. I will mostly cover power related points, however there will be spoilers anyway. Let's go. So let's start this one off by talking about Midoriya. So there's not much to discuss about Midoriya, however it is very important to note that he is quirkless, and that is actually important. Also, it's very rare to be born quirkless, and even rarer right now to be born quirkless in the show. One more thing to talk about Midoriya being quirkless is that he developed a hobby where he analyzes and writes about heroes' quirks, which just teaches him a lot about all kinds of quirks, which came in handy eventually. And also Midoriya is a very decent kid. He would get himself in danger just to help other people, which is why All Might picked him up to be the next user of one for all, and it makes a lot of sense, to be honest. However, him receiving one for all did not come with no consequences. You see, the thing about him is that he was very bad at using one for all at the beginning. He even hurt himself while using that quirk specifically. But thanks to his hobby of analyzing heroes' quirk, he got a really good learning curve where he learned how to use one for all not really quickly, but the moment he did, it moved rapidly since then. I meant learned rapidly since then. And now let's talk about one for all. So to talk about one for all, we need to learn a few things at the beginning. The first one is the fact that there are already 9 different users for this quirk, meaning this quirk can be passed down and live for a very long time. And to learn more about that, we will need to talk about the first user and his story, and how one for all came into existence. The story begins when humanity started giving birth to kids with powers, of course. At that time, 2 brothers were born. One of them was quirkless and the other one had a very powerful quirk. And just so happened that the first user was the quirkless brother, so clearly he's the younger brother. As for his older brother, he got a very powerful quirk that allowed him to steal quirks from others and even give it to other people later on, which he used to create an army that he used for his own benefits. And he was very evil. He'd do whatever he wants and no one would stop him, meaning he is a proper older brother. And back to the first user, he objected his older brother and stood against him, which obviously didn't end well for him. He ended up being locked by his older brother, and during that time his older brother decided to give him a quirk, which was a big mistake because turns out he already got one, and those two did fuse together. And the quirk that was given to the first user was a stockpiling quirk, a quirk that allowed him to stockpile power and use it in the future. As for the quirk that was within him, it is a quirk that allowed him to pass down his powers to the next individual, and that is one for all. However, there is a third effect to one for all that we need to discuss, and that is an ability that allows one for all to take quirks from future users. This quirk is very weird, and the way even its mechanics are very weird. So let me explain it, and for that I will use an example. Let's say there is an individual and let's call them A, for example. A got a fire quirk and was later on given one for all. One for all and the fire quirk are not gonna merge together yet, but both of them are gonna be inside person A. And now let's talk about person B. let's say there is a person B with a quirk, let's say fire, for example. Wait, I said fire. Water, for example. When they receive one for all from person A, one for all will take the fire quirk and merge it with one for all and then pass it down. Meaning that person B right now have only two quirks, the water quirk and one for all merged with the fire quirk. And that mechanic is actually very, very important because it will explain a lot in the future. Now that I have explained one for all, it's time to explain the quirks that are inside one for all. However, before I do that, I need to know two things. The first one is that the first user that managed to pull out the quirks is actually Midoriya, because beforehand the quirk was too weak to do that, and it only relied on the stockpiling part of one for all to become stronger and stronger. And the second is when Midoriya tapped into the quirks, he also managed to find the conscience of the previous users. So somehow he can communicate with them right now inside him, which makes learning their quirks very, very easier for him. But now let's talk about these quirks and what they do. First of all is Black Whip. Black Whip is a quirk that allows the user to make a whip out of energy. They can generate it or manifest it from any part of their bodies, and they can control it at will, and can be made stronger with anger. Not an emotion you want to have as a hero though. Very, very useful quirk that can be used for both mobility and capturing targets. Next up is Float. This ability allows the user to levitate. It's not clear if it's only levitation or it does allow an individual to fly as well, meaning move in the skies. However, it doesn't matter that much because with one for all they can do that anyway, and it's very good for mobility, of course. Next up is Smoke Screen. In my opinion, the most useless ability here, and it generates a big cloud so the user would hide inside it. It's great for an ambush in my opinion. Next up is Danger Sense, and this one I think in my opinion the most useful one right here. This one allows the user to feel their surroundings and feel the danger that could go towards them. The problem with this quirk is that it does not feel all kinds of danger, only danger that comes with malice, meaning if the opponent did attack Midoriya by mistake, Danger Sense will not be activated. However, the problem with this quirk is, first off, is very stressful and painful to use for Midoriya right now, and also is not the best to use against quick attacks. And the final revealed ability is Fajin. This ability allows the user to store kinetic energy and then release them as both speed and power. They can release that energy at once or they can release it in smaller batches. And also it's very important to note there is still one quirk that has not been revealed yet, because One for All had the first user, and after that it had the second all the way up to the 7th user, and then All Might and Midoriya, which both are quirkless. However, the 6 users that had it after the first user are all with quirks. And simply put, Midoriya is really good at using these quirks together. He can learn midway through battle as well. So clearly he is a really good user. And now let's talk more information on the pros and cons of this quirk. Let's start off with the stockpiling part of this quirk. The best thing about this is that it has an infinite use, meaning all the previous users can build this power infinitely and make it infinitely powerful as well. However, the big problem with it is that it is very, very slow. And then let's talk about the most annoying part about this whole quirk is the merging factor of One for All. The factor that allows the user to merge two quirks, how it works, and the problems of having two different quirks as well. I will be talking about all of that. And I will start this one off by talking about the effect of One for All on people who have already had their own quirks. And it is very simple. Since those people have two different quirks, they couldn't tap into the full potential of One for All, meaning they cannot use 100% of the quirk at all. And then we find out that One for All does shorten their lifespan, as well as it could actually break their bodies, and it's not very difficult to happen. In fact, the 4th user had his body started breaking while training One for All, not fighting with it, just training, which is not good for the quirk at all. However, the good faith about it is that One for All will gain another quirk for the future, and also before they pass down their powers, all their quirks are gonna be stronger with One for All in them. And now let's talk about its effects on quirkless people. And simply put, it is actually very difficult for a quirkless person to control that power initially, and we've seen that with Midoriya, as he have countlessly broken his hands and sometimes even his legs. But on the other hand, they can use it at 100% if they wanted to, meaning they are the best to increase the quirk's power. And obviously, since someone quirkless took it, One for All will not be gaining an extra quirk when it is passed down to the next user. However, a quirkless person can build up the powers of One for All to the max, as we've seen already with All Might. And now let's talk about Midoriya with One For All, which is very interesting if you'd ask me. You see, the thing about Midoriya is that he's the first user that actually managed to pull out the quirks, which comes with a lot of benefits but a lot of bad things as well. When Midoriya got told that he can use all the previous users' quirks, he also got told that no one with a quirk should take it after that, simply because One For All is too powerful for a body with a quirk to handle it at this point. But the problem with that is a quirkless individual is hard to find at this point. So is Midoriya potentially the last user or no? Well, let's add a little bit into this. You see, when Midoriya took One For All, he injured himself many times. So if another quirkless individual took it after Midoriya, while it is even way stronger than before, would there be a possibility that they end up in a very not good place? Which also makes for another argument that Midoriya was the only sweet spot in the whole line, both before and after. So before Midoriya, no one managed to get the most out of this quirk, and after him it is more than likely to become very difficult to use, or even to find a user for it. Which gets me into the quirk's failures. You see, all these are my opinions, but I feel like I need to talk about them. The first one being, this quirk can be passed down. So for a quirk like that, you'd at least expect it to have a wide range of compatibility with people. But turns out it's not, simply because it's too powerful for people with quirks and such. And that has to do a lot more with the merging factor, because it happens upon passing down the power and not about receiving it, which also in my opinion makes it for a very dumb mechanics that also do not make any sense, for me at least. And finally is the stockpiling effect, where if someone quirkless took it, they will be able to build it, but if someone with a quirk took it, they won't. It made it feel like all the previous users held it just to pass it down later on. They couldn't even build it to become stronger quick enough. But at the very least they managed to give their quirks, of course. It just took a bit too much for these quirks to show up, is the problem. And when they did, it became almost impossible to add more to it. Another very weird thing about this quirk. You say there are a lot of problems in it, in my opinion, but I feel like for the most part it's been done just to make it look like Midoriya is the last one that's gonna use it, which hopefully is not. Which will take me into the conclusion and rating for this power. And the first thing I want to talk about in this part is Midoriya, as he has proven himself as an A+ user. There's no debate about that at all. However, if I'm gonna be rating One For All, it's gonna be a little bit different and a little bit difficult, because I can't give it only one rating. Because for Midoriya's time, clearly it's an A or an A+ quirk, because it is fulfilling its purpose and even more. But if I am going to include everyone from the first user all the way to Midoriya, it's a B quirk at best. And if I'm gonna include the future, well, it doesn't look good. However, I'm not gonna rate it for that. I will just leave it like this for now, simply because I feel like there will be a lot of workarounds behind the passing down the quirk to someone and finding someone quirkless. I feel it could be managed by other quirks and other people, but that would be a theory at that point, and I don't want this video to be that. And also there are a lot of lack of facts as well. And so I will end it right here. Thank you very much for watching. This was the video, and please subscribe, like, and bye.